Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paul Oldroyd. He's a technical fellow at Bell Helicopter, a division of Textron. He holds a degree in chemical engineering from Brigham Young University. During his career of more than 35 years at Bell, Paul has distinguished himself as an expert in many areas of technology development, maturation, engineering design, R&D, transition to production strategy, and manufacturing management, particularly in the areas of advanced composites and automation. His fellowship role includes a responsibility to provide intelligence regarding current state-of-the-art and future state process knowledge for composites, fabrication, automation, and assembly integration technologies to Bell and other Textron business units. Paul is a frequent author and speaker. He has served on numerous advisory boards, steering committees, panels, and councils. He holds 36 patents and patents pending for process and product inventions. He is a recipient of the Donald C. Burnham International Award for Excellence in Manufacturing Management from SME. He is a two-time recipient of the Robert L. Pinckney Award for Excellence in Manufacturing Innovation from the American Helicopter Society, and is a two-time recipient of the Textron Chairman's Award for Innovation. Please help me welcome Paul Oldroyd.
Very insignificant.
Thanks,
Thank you, Doug. Hello.
It's okay.
I think my mic is on now. Hello, how are you today? It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, and particularly I'd like to thank SME for allowing us to have this relevant conversation about how to manage our careers. I'd like to also thank in advance our distinguished and esteemed panelists. I'm going to introduce each of them individually in a few minutes. But before I do that, I just had a couple of thoughts. First of all, a little bit of a short personal history. I've been in the industry, like Doug mentioned, for 35 years. When I started at Bell Helicopter, I thought, like many think when they start, I'm going to be there 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years. I'm going to make another move and move up, be there 2 or 3 or 4 years, make another move. I'm going to retire at 35 as Vice President of Operations, go to the Bahamas, whatever. You know, we all have this vision of what our career trajectory will be, and we really don't want that, and it's always wrong. We all are technologists or engineers. And when we were in high school, we all scored in the 99th percentile on the mechanical aptitude test. And because we think in spatial relationships, we see things the way they are without having to work on them. We're technologists. And when we were in high school, we thought we knew what an engineer was. We thought we knew what we'd study in college. And we got into college and we thought, man, I didn't have a clue. Now I know what an engineer is. And so we thought when we were in college that we knew what our career would be like. And then when we got in the industry, we thought, wow, when I was in college, I didn't have a clue. It's totally different. And so today's panel, I've asked them to focus on the kinds of decisions that we get confronted with and how we, in our careers, both before we start a career, early career, and as we approach later careers, how we can influence our trajectory rather than have our trajectory influence us. I'm also the manager of our LDP program at Bell. That's the Leadership Development Program, where we take young engineers that have promise as they enter the company. We give them an opportunity to serve in several different business units around the country to see where they fit best and what they like so that they can be more productive in their workplace environments. And as such, I prepared just a little template to help them understand the entire landscape that would affect their careers so that as decisions came up, they'd be better prepared to take them. And I'm going to take you just quickly through that as kind of a caveat to our panel discussion today. If you go to the next slide, please. If you think about your careers, we all tend to think that our careers in aerospace are technical in nature and that we will always reside down in that green piece of the pie, when in reality, maybe 5 or 10% of our actual work is done there, and the rest of it is interpersonal relationships and logistics, execution, what we do day to day. My most important class in college was probably English 316 because it taught me how to communicate. And we don't get that when we're in college. We don't really understand that. Then there's a relationship between these three legs of our career stool. And each of those are significant too. If you'd hit that next button, The interaction between the interpersonal relationship part of our career and the logistical execution part of our career can be defined as politics. We have to be politicians if we want to manage our own careers. It's who we know and what we do, and that intersection is politics. Hit the button again. The intersection between logistical execution and our technical capabilities is our value. What is it that we need? What is it we derive? What is it we provide to a potential employer? If you hit that button one more time, the intersection between our technical careers and our interpersonal relationships becomes our strategy. In fact, is the definition of our career strategy. If you'll go ahead and hit the forward button. The kinds of things that if we want to move off of dead center in our careers and we want to move one direction or another, the decisions that come to us will help us do that, but our extracurricular activities will do as well. And if you take a look, if you want to move more toward interpersonal relationships and things like business development and HR, the things that you can do there is to start to network. You're doing it today. SME, SAMPE, Toastmasters, different clubs will help you network so that the interpersonal relationship part of your careers can enhance your ability to do what you want to do. Next, please. Logistical execution. You want to be plant manager, you want to be vice president, the things to do are look for MBAs, advanced business degrees, Wharton's Kellogg School, those kinds of things. Next button. The technical career is advanced degrees, specialist, accreditations, society fellowships, university fellowships. And if you'll hit the next button again, please. The kinds of jobs that reside in these, and if you hit those next two buttons quickly, are the kinds of things that we've already talked about. And in the interest of time, I'm going to go past that and go to the next slide. Go ahead and forward if you would. And hit all three of those buttons. So these are, this is what I share with our LDPs. These are the kinds of careers and career titles that reside in each of those pie elements or on the borders of each of those pie elements. And so as we talk to our LDPs, if they get a picture in their head of this landscape, then they're better prepared to make the decisions that will affect their careers. We are notorious at taking a really good engineer, offering him a project leadership and then a program management leadership opportunity, and we turn good engineers into bad program managers all the time. And the way we can combat that is if we make them aware of all of the capabilities that they have and what they want to do, then they can decide whether or not to take that. It's easy to move from a technical role into an interpersonal relationships role or from a technical into a management role. It's harder to move back. So we encourage them to protect their identity as a technical entity until they're sure that what they want to do. Now, with just that introduction, I'd like to introduce our panelists, and I hope we can have a great opportunity to talk today. If you'll all please come up. Oh, and I have an impromptu panelist today. Nick Bolen, I was talking to him at a STEM event about a half an hour ago, and he volunteered to join our panel. So. In fact, I'll start with you, Nick.
Thanks.
I'm going to let you give just a short introduction, if you would, and then I'll move to the others.
Hi, my name is Nick Bolen. I've been in this business, aerospace business, for many years. And career advancement, I've mentored a lot of young people. Many of them are now in leadership positions in my industry, in my company, and outside the industry.
First, I'd like to introduce Dan Braley. Dan he works for Boeing Global Services in St. Louis, Missouri, and he's responsible for flight control surface and wing technical integration. He has 13 years of aerospace program and R&D experience in additive manufacturing, and I've known him for a long time, and he has been kind of a voice of additive manufacturing for Boeing St. Louis. Before that, he worked for Northrop Grumman Aerospace, L3 Communications, and Air Force and AFRL in the Munitions Aerial Vehicle Directorate at Eglin Air Force Base. He holds 8 patents and has in areas of additive manufacturing. He's received Northrop Grumman Innovation Award, the F-35 Lightning Rod Award, and a Supply Chain Excellence Award. He holds degrees in BS and MS from Florida State University and an MS Engineering Management from Drexel. Please welcome Mr. Dan Braley. Also on our panel today is Mr. Kelly Dodds. Kelly is the Technical Director for Advanced Manufacturing, leading the Advanced Modernization and Technology Organization for Raytheon Space and Airborne Systems. His responsibilities include strategic planning and development for manufacturing, factory modernization, industrial engineering initiatives. These initiatives span Six Sigma, alignment, SAS operations, Industry 4.0, smart factory, and industry transformations. Previous relevant experience includes being an engineering fellow and a technical area director for mechanical materials, structures, and manufacturing. Mr. Dodd started his career in 2001 as a design lead. He's worked in quality engineering, has a diverse career, including engineering management, space, technology areas directorate, numerous boards and committees. Please welcome Mr. Kelly Dodds. Mr. Jamal Nadni is Boeing's Enterprise Technology Chief Strategist, responsible for architecting the integrated technology strategies and roadmaps, technology assessments, corporate merger and acquisitions, due diligence. Prior to this, Jamal served in a variety of roles over a 5-year period with Boeing's satellite prototyping and software company. He's created and led a number of employment engagement activities, including Rosen Games, Da Vinci Summit, mentoring on-rotation experience, and a CLEAR initiative. Jamal is also an MSX Fellow at the Stanford Business School. He graduated with an MS in Biomedical Engineering and a Master's in Electrical Engineering from UCLA. Prior to that, he received a BS in Computer Engineering, Computer Science, and a BA in Mathematics from the University of Southern California, where he's currently completing his doctorate in Organizational Change and Leadership. He's been a recipient of several awards. He was selected as a 2011 Edward K. Rice Outstanding Master Student Award given to the top engineering master student at UCLA. Please welcome Mr. Jamal Nadni. And finally, Noel Ellis is with us today. He's Director of Engineering Learning and University Relations at Space and Airborne Systems for Raytheon. Let's see, I'm going to let him introduce the company himself. As Director of Engineering and Learning and University Relations, his responsibilities include the development and leadership for engineering education, organizational training, as well as a number of talent development programs. He leads engineering university relations and manages the university research portfolio. Since joining Raytheon in 2003, he's held numerous leadership positions, served as Raytheon's Professor of Practice at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. He's also a leader and spokesperson for Raytheon's ongoing efforts to promote student interest in careers in science, technology, education, and math, frequent panelist and speaker on STEM-related topics, 20 years experience in management and consulting. Please welcome Mr. Noel Ellis. And with that, I think I'll start with Noel and let him give you just a couple minutes of his philosophy on how we can better manage our careers. Noel.
Oh, so I get to start. Thank you for that introduction. I've been working in industry for about 30 years now. Graduated from Purdue, and I think a little bit unlike what you said at the beginning, when I was in high school, I didn't have any idea what an engineer was. My dad was a chef, my mom worked in the hotel business, and I thought engineers drove trains. So I didn't really get an idea for what an engineer was until college. When I graduated, I guess I'll say that I've never had a plan for where I thought my career was going to be. Maybe early on, the first couple years as a new electrical engineer at Hughes Aircraft Company, I probably had a similar thought. I'm going to be president of the company in 10 years and then retire, maybe to New Zealand, not the Caribbean or someplace. But what I discovered early on was that what I thought the job was like was nothing like it actually was. And I found opportunities popping up all the time. So there were a few things that have sort of driven me over the years, and that is I found that saying yes to opportunities was a good thing, even those things that were uncomfortable. I recognized early on that there was a need for a balance between what I wanted to do and what the company needed me to do. And I found that working that balance generally worked to my benefit. The other thing that I learned early on was that all of my choices and decisions had a consequence. They didn't necessarily close a door, but they were potentially opening up another door. And so every decision that I've made over the last 30 years has been with an understanding of, I may not know where this is going to go, but I know that there are some consequences associated with that. I guess the other thing I'd say is that in the last, let's say, 20 years, I've made 2, maybe 3 really big career decisions. And each of those decisions was based on things that were going on in my personal life at home. The first decision I made was when I turned 30, I left a secure position and went to work for a 4-person startup. Good opportunity in my life to go do something very different. I did that for a while and found that being on the road 50 weeks out of the year was not conducive to having a family. And so that next big decision I made was based on finding an opportunity that kept me close to home. And so it was those decisions and the impact of my personal life that helped me identify and find those roles that both were valuable and were enjoyable to myself, but also provided something of value to my employer at the time.
Perfect. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Sure. So I've been in industry about 18 years now. So I got my foundation in design. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I spent a good 5 years doing pretty much hardcore design, right? GD&T. I was a design lead for some infrared detector technologies, which really I've reused throughout my career. That's one of the things that I feel fortunate in, is I got a very strong foundation technically when I started my career, and I had great mentors as well. When I moved on, I was told that if you leave engineering, you will never come back. I was taking a job in supply chain operations, but I always knew that I wanted to stay technical in whatever jump I made. So I went over to supply chain as a technical representative to bring technical skills to that group. That set the stage for my next job, which worked for corporate technology, and where we basically worked for the corporation under the CTO for about a year. And both my design foundation and my curiosity about the business and how the whole system operated within that supply chain operations group really gave me some of the business foundations for what I needed to work at that corporate level. And I won't go through every job I had. I came back, did design, went back into kind of R&D type activities, and now I'm in my current job where I have a portfolio of manufacturing technology development. And I couldn't do what I'm doing today without that foundation of design. And I guess if I were to say there's really 3 or 4 things that I think apply to everybody from a career development perspective. We tend to think of things as climbing a ladder, right, or going up the staircase and have this very structured development in our careers. I think from my perspective, I've always found something I'm passionate about. And if you're not sure what you're passionate about, follow your curiosity, because shortly behind curiosity is passion. The second thing is self-learning. So in every job I've been in, I've spent hours in our corporate library we have, pulling papers, reading journals, understanding the new field that I'm working in. And even when it's not new, using those resources to learn about and refine the expertise that I need for that role. And then I think with that, you can kind of think of your career as like a river. I was giving this analogy earlier. I don't think of it as a staircase. When I took my job 18 years ago with Raytheon, I put on a life jacket and I jumped in a river. And you are going down that river, and you have choices you can make. You can swim one way or the other, but you're going down that river. Eventually you might want to climb out and go to a different river, but it's continuously flowing. So always look for those opportunities. I only ever had a 2-year outlook because I kind of have a curiosity about just about everything technical. And so I always had about a 2-year outlook, looking for that next opportunity. But I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. So I think I'll stop there, and I know we got a lot of other panelists to get through. So
Jamal, please.
Thanks so much. That's awesome. I want to start with a little bit of a story. And I was probably a year or two into Boeing, and I had a meeting with a mentor. And, I was very eager, early career, ready to start my career and try for the 35-year dream in the Bahamas and say, what do I need to do to kind of climb the ladder? How can I be this person I admire or that person that I admire, and what can enable me to do that? And I remember coming to my mentor and asking him these types of questions. And he told me something that was really profound, that really shifted my thinking when it came to career development and management ever since. And he said, Jamal, the reality is that the rate of technology is changing so much, the rate of our businesses are changing so much, that person that you most identify with, or that role that you most identify with, is probably not going to exist by the time you're ready for it. And so saying, I want to be person X, or I want to take job Y, is actually the wrong way to start this conversation. And it's really the wrong questions to start asking. And so I went back and was really moved by this, and I did some research, and it was sort of confirmed by an article in Forbes recently. And Forbes said that by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. And so with that as a backdrop, how do you shape your career moving forward? And I've found kind of 3 principles that I've learned, I'm continuing to learn, and really applying. And the first is, if you want a great career, do your current job better than anybody else has ever done before. There's no better way to brand and market yourself for future opportunities than doing your current job exceptionally well.
I would second that. That is the biggest thing I've found. I
Absolutely.
totally agree.
And the
There's
second,
one principle.
The second is really look for those challenges or problems or issues within your team or your group that are either A, difficult, or B, that nobody wants to do. Take on those opportunities, because ultimately what will happen is you will sort of create a name for yourself as the fixer, or the go-to person, or the person that can really handle messy, squishy problems that are undefined. And as that moves along, leaders and managers and executives will sort of look at you as the go-to person, and will start reaching out to you for these types of tasks, and the doors really open up. And the third I would say is really try to break the cycle of efficiency in your day. I think oftentimes we're so focused on our routine and the efficiency associated with our routine. I gotta get in by 7:15, I gotta be out by 5:30, because I gotta beat the traffic here, or I have to be here, and so on and so forth. And so what do? We sort of cut corners in areas where we don't think is directly related to our job. An example will be, we'll bring our lunch and we'll eat it at our desk. That helps in terms of efficiency on a day-to-day standpoint, but that hurts in terms of long-term career. And so really challenging yourself to say, let me get away from my comfort zone. Let me have lunch with a mentor once a week. Let me go to a lunchtime talk once a week. Let me engage with others, because that gets you to start learning. That gets you to start building your network. And ultimately what you're trying to do is, career is really like a Venn diagram, and I think a lot of folks have touched on this. It's really finding that intersection point between what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what the company needs. And it's ultimately getting to where those 3 circles intersect is where you want to be moving forward.
So, Jamal, I echo almost everything you just said. And what you'll find is the story that I want to give is kind of that from when I started in high school. So I come out of high school, or I'm in high school, and I decided, or I found like a real interest in biomechanics. Like, I want to work on biomedical implants. I want to be that guy that creates the bionic people, And so I went after a whole bunch of I guess opportunities in that space. There weren't many colleges that even offered that back, you know. So I've been in the field or in the engineering world for about 15 years, and so I ended up going to Florida State, and my ultimate thought was that I would end up in a biomechanics type world. Little did I know that I would get opportunities with the Air Force Research Laboratory to work on unmanned aerial vehicles, new technologies, you know, applying composites, advanced new technologies that at that time people really didn't even understand. And using that as kind of a stepping ground into my career. I guess the other part of that is, so I kind of evolved into that. I still have, you know, those interests in biomechanics and biomechanical engineering, but now I'm in the aerospace industry because I love it too. And you have to be willing to evolve, willing to adapt to you know what's out there, and you know it's okay to have several interests. What I found the most impact in my career was getting involved in rotation programs. So I was in a technical rotation program that allowed me to go around the various areas at the time with Northrop Grumman at the various to see each of the areas of making a satellite and to understand, okay, you start as a designer. How do you actually apply this? Okay, how do you actually manufacture it? To be on the floor to actually manufacture some of what you come out of school thinking, oh, you know, I can design this, but can I actually make it? Then there's the technical integration of it and actually putting that together, but then finding out what within that you're most interested in. I ended up, you know, really getting involved in material science and in materials and processes, and I didn't necessarily think that was the direction I was going to go. It has evolved into, you know, a career right now. Now I'm the Boeing Global Services Additive Manufacturing Technical Focal for all programs, all sites. At the time, when I was in college, 15 years ago, additive manufacturing had been invented, but nobody taught it. I didn't know anything about it. Being willing to adapt and to really, I guess, find your niche in the world. So very much speaking to exactly what you said, Jamal.
My turn?
Go ahead, Nick.
What all those people said. Plus, you know, this illusion of success is sometimes self-defined. There are a lot of people who think that I want to be a vice president that might have been happier to be an engineer. You have to define truly within yourself what you want to be, not what you think you want to be. I had to make that choice. I was on a fast track at Northrop Grumman Corporation, and I decided that's not what I want to be. And I assume, Paul, you're happy with where you are. I'm happy as a technologist. That's my success. So the first thing you have to do, and I think all of you would say the same thing, that you have to define what's successful to you, not what someone else defines or what you perceive to be successful to you, but what makes you happy and what satisfies your needs to be successful. But I would echo what everyone else said, plus this one thing. If you're going to go into a Bell, if you're going to go into a Boeing, if you're going to go into a Northrop, I mentored a young man who's a vice president now. And he came, I mentored him through Purdue University, through internships, through his bachelor's degree and his master's degree in science technologies. And he came to me and he said, right after he hired in and became full-time employee at Northrop, he came to me and he said, now I want my PhD. I said, you just started work here. You haven't even paid us back for the internships you paid for yet. You know, so I said, here's what I would like you to do. Go get an MBA, because you need to understand how my organization works, how this company works, a large company works, in order to get those technical things done that you're such an expert at. Understand the business. Understand how the business operates, because at the end of the day, it's not about the toys. It's not about the technology. It's about whether or not it makes sense for my business and whether or not it's going to make a profit for our business. Because at the end of the day, if we're not profitable, I'm not hiring you. And that's a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn. I've had engineers, the hardest thing that we do as leadership is to go into an engineer and say, you've worked on that project 2 years, I'm pulling a plug on it. Had engineers break down and cry. So that's the next message I would tell you. Don't take it personally. Things change. In this business, our direction changes. The things that we do change. Sometimes you're going to be disappointed. I know this is probably an incorrect term right now, but man up. You know, accept it, move on, take your hit, and get on to the next project. That's tough. I know every one of you have had that happen to them, where somebody's walked in your door and said, look, you know what, we're moving on to another direction. That project you put your heart into for 2 years, it's done. Pick it up, move it on, get on with it. And the sooner you do that, the faster people look at you and say, that's a guy I want on my team, person I want on my team. The other thing is get back to basics. Be the first in, the last out, lead by example. You'll be noticed. And I think you mentioned that early on. One of you mentioned that early on. Don't be that guy that wants to get out of there first. Don't be that guy that shows up 10 minutes after the start of your shift. Set the example, lead the team by example. That's a part of progression in your career. You will be noticed. Don't stand up and say, I'm here. just get there, get to work, get engaged and involved, and sooner or later somebody will notice you. There's 1,000 other things I wrote, but we don't have time, so let's get moving.
So thank you for your thoughts and comments. I will start with one question, and then I think there may be some online, and we can take some from the audience. We have 6 or 7 minutes for questions, and the first question I would like to ask Jamal, and that is, have you ever turned down a promotion opportunity, and if yes, why?
So it's a great question. I have, and it was a very interesting type of role. It was sort of, I was in the company for a couple of years and had the opportunity to take on a more significant leadership role. And it was a role that was very well defined, it was very clean. And it was in the classified space, and there was kind of a certain timeline and certain deliverables. And intuitively, I thought, this is not the right thing to do. It sounds great, it feels right, but oftentimes we sort of think of career progression as almost the greedy algorithm, right? It's, I want to take on the next role. I want to go up in level, or I want to go up in salary, or I want to go up in responsibility. And thinking of your career as sort of a point-to-point solution is a little myopic, because ultimately what you want to do is you want to maximize the area under the curve. And sometimes maximizing the area under the curve doesn't follow a linear function. Sometimes you kind of have to go like this to go like that. In sort of, you know, you have to kind of hug the exponential, if you will, when it comes to your own career. And you have to maximize that area under the curve when it comes to your potential, your passion, as well as your personal life. And so while that particular opportunity gave me the next step, it just didn't feel right in terms of where I was going to take that and move forward. And so I had to really kind of pull back and say, what do I really want? And in retrospect, it was the right decision.
So that's a great comment. A lot of times you're going to be offered promotions because your company's desperate to fill it. And you need to decide whether or not you are the right one and it's in your best interest, because if it is, it's in your company's best interest too. Very good comments. I don't see the questions here, but I have one more that I'd like to ask too. And I think, Nick, I'll ask you this question. When did your motivation become less about compensation and more about what can I provide, either as a legacy or to my company?
Yeah, Paul, that's a tough question for me because I've always had a passion for what I did. I recognized my passion was greater than my need for a lot of things. My team and I were working on a project. We went into our lab and walked out, and I said, wow, I thought we'd been in there a long time. The sun's not even down. And my team turned to me and said, no, Nick, we've been in there 32 hours. We haven't eaten, we haven't slept, we haven't done anything. We were just going. I just, if you find, I can't tell you, I mean, it's all, you know, the greater joy in your life is not about compensation, it's important. It's not about food, it's important. But self-actualization and the satisfaction you get for something, doing something that you really love, it's just beyond belief. And you know, I constantly hear, and I know I'm going on a little bit about Generation X, Generation Y, they don't have the same thing. I take on that responsibility because I say that if Generation X, Generation Y, or whatever the current du jour term is for the generation coming up, if they don't have the passion for what we do, then that's my fault. That's our fault. We haven't lit that flame and made that fire rage within them for the same passion for what we do that we have.
Couldn't agree more.
So I think we need to take that responsibility. Human nature hasn't changed over millennia. People are still motivated by the need to have something that they believe in and just pursue with a passion that takes them beyond the need for those things that are primal to them, although they need to have those to survive. We're human after all. But once we reach that point, to answer your point, Paul, once I walked in the door and saw what I was going to do, it just became something I wanted to do. I don't know when that magic moment came, because for me it wasn't a magic moment other than to walk in the door and say, okay, wow, I've arrived at home. This is what I want to do the rest of my life.
Would it be fair to summarize to say don't be distracted by trivial compensation?
Yeah, I mean, we have to eat, right? I mean, you know, and I like nice things like anybody else, but I mean, that isn't my primary goal. That isn't why I go to work every day. That isn't what fires me up and lights my fires, right? And I think that's what you're saying, right?
Kelly, I think you were getting ready to say something. Was that
Yeah, I mean, I was going to answer. It was the day after I signed my initial offer to Raytheon. I mean, I literally, not that it hasn't been a factor in decisions, but very literally, that was the last time. That was the most important thing.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of questions here, unless anybody has something like that on that point. Dan?
Well, yeah, so going back to actually both questions, you know, and kind of tying those together, you know, I've been offered the opportunity to take hard-to-fill management positions, you know, positions that really nobody wants. And again, it's one of those things. What do you want in your career? I've turned them down. You know, that's not what I want to do in my career. It's not about making money. It's about being happy and doing what you see best for both yourself and the company. If you're not going to be happy in that position, don't take it.
So we only have a couple minutes, and all three of the questions that are here are really relevant, and they're all coming from young engineers who say, how am I possibly going to be able to navigate this thing called a career in aerospace? Let's just read all three of them, and then we'll kind of comment on them because they're all related. First, to all of us, or any of us, what shocked you the most when you transitioned from college to a career? And it is a transition. It's trial by fire. Next, how do you go about finding a mentor? This is somebody who's kind of searching for who can help me navigate this. And last, or the third one, what advice do you have for young engineers that feel like they aren't getting enough responsibility or feel undermined because of lack of experience? How many of you have felt those things? I have. Yeah. I did, and we've all been there. So would anybody like to comment? Pick one of those three and comment.
So I can jump off. You know, and kind of answering all of them together a little bit. What's fascinating about the difference between kind of college and career is the paradigm is different. You know, in college, especially in engineering, you're solving very structured problems that are in a box, and you have a number of classmates with you that are solving the same problems. In industry, in your job, you will often find that you are the only person that's responsible for the task that you have. And so there's this element of uniqueness that comes into play, and it also requires you to be more than just a problem solver. For instance, our CEO talks about his ideal employee of the future, and he uses the terms plug and play. The ideal employee of the future is someone you can just plug in and play, where you can drop a new employee into a new situation that has new technologies, interesting politics, certain processes, and they're able to learn and adapt quickly and bring value. And so that brings in kind of the technical piece as well as the interpersonal piece. And in terms of the question about mentoring, what's the best way to go about doing that? Mentoring is really something that is a transformational experience, and I highly recommend it to everyone in this audience. And thinking about mentoring from the perspective of 360 degrees. It's not always just about having the person that's highest on the org chart that's your mentor.
There it is.
You want to have someone who's
Absolutely.
high, you want to have someone who's close in level to you, and you also want to be in relationships where you're reverse mentoring, because you learn that a lot about yourself and what you want to do through that experience. And you can do that through formal programs, but also just reaching out to someone that you identify with, and you'll often find that they are hungry to mentor. I have found that in my experience at Boeing, any individual that I've reached out to has been so eager to have that relationship. And once you sort of establish the parameters of that relationship, it really is meaningful and beneficial. So it's not as scary as it may seem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Noel. I've got a question for you.
I want to add
too.
something on that paradigm shift. So when you're in college and in academia in general, there's this idea that you take a class, well, you go to college and you graduate and you get this degree, and you're therefore qualified to do something. And I think there's a paradigm shift in when you go to work, that we value experience a little bit more than we value that degree or that certificate. And in fact, most companies like ours have, we subscribe to, we call it a 70-20-10 model of employee development that says 70% of what makes an employee capable and ready for that next job are the experiences that they have, whereas the 20% is accelerants like networking and mentoring, and 10% is actual in-class learning. So it's the experiences, and I think that's the big, from my perspective, that's a big shift in the paradigm from a college or academic environment to the workplace, because we're looking for those experiences. And if you don't feel you're getting the opportunities, and I've lost the question here, is that if you're not getting enough responsibility, I encourage folks to find opportunities to take it. I think the other difference is in school, things are much more structured, and you're given homework and you're given things to do. And in the workplace, there's much more of a requirement or an expectation that you're going to take opportunities, that you're going to take those responsibilities. And so I'd encourage folks to find those opportunities to take on those responsibilities.
I think the biggest shock for me was that there was always an end state in school and college, right? You had an end degree, and then you step out into work, and it's just a wide open space. There's no target, there's no end. It's just, here's the world. So I think it took a shift in me to then utilize some of the projects I was on to have that end state and to feel like you had those, kind of tangible, goals to get to. So yeah, I was kind of stepping out from that, having a specific target to, it's just the world, just keep walking.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great summary. We'll add one thought as we close, and that is we struggle all our careers at the international level, at the company level, and particularly at the individual level to remain relevant. And we can't do that without change. We can't do that without embracing and adapting to change. And so be able to do that. If you take a look at emerging technologies, the pace with which we have to get to a point in our industry where we are relevant in terms of economy of scale is moved from decades to several years to several months, and in some cases even less. Things like additive manufacturing. Our careers are no different. We need to be as adaptable as industry has been recently.
I would second that, Paul. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we've talked about things that are extremely relevant to all levels of our careers, from STEM kids. My motivation, at least recently, has changed because I've been involved in STEM, and it's been invigorating for me. It's something that I didn't really realize I would get so much enjoyment out of. But I think this has been a great panel. I'd like to thank the panelists and SME for allowing us the opportunity to do it, and I'd like to ask you to give them a hand, please.